Hey everyone, and welcome to the AI Risk Reward Podcast. It's your host, Alec Crawford, and our special guest today is Kevin Dean, CEO of ManoByte. Welcome, Kevin.
Hey, Alec, I am glad to be on the show and ready to have a really great conversation with you today.
Yeah, no, let's have some fun. I mean,
Yeah, for sure.
first of all, wow, look, you've been at ManoByte for 18 years. That's a super long time. Geez, my youngest kid is 21 years old. But you've been doing technology for a long time, like me, and I love asking, like, hey, Kevin, what was your first computer?
Yeah. So I'm going to date myself. My first computer was a Commodore 64 back in the
Wow.
day. You probably remember those things
Oh
we
yeah.
like
Oh yeah.
this
Wow, you had a
cool
whapping
go to.
64K of
Yeah.
memory. Yeah, no,
Yep. Oh,
my
yeah.
first one was a TRS-80 with only 16K of memory, so yeah, pretty wild. And I'm just curious, I sometimes I talk about school, but you just did the MIT X Pro
Yeah.
program for AI.
Yeah.
I swear to God, someone every week calls me up and goes, what class should I take? So I'm curious what your take was on that and if you would recommend it to the listeners.
Yeah. So I always recommend to people to always continue your education. You're going to continue to grab and get new bits of information. Um, the MIT course fabulous from two perspectives. Number one, um, it's a timely topic. Number two, I mean, it's MIT and the people that you network with and that you work with as fellow classmates is probably the better experience. I mean, being
Hmm.
at Harvard and your fellow students and who you worked with and who you collaborated with, you get so much from interacting with others. And I think that you always learn more outside of the classroom, perhaps than you do inside of the classroom by interactions and engagement, especially as you become an older learner. I think those experiences are invaluable.
Super cool. Yeah, I'm definitely in the lifelong learner. And is this online or partly online in person? How does it work?
Yeah, so the MIT one is online. So it is, but with lots of experiences for people to interact and engage um, like in these types of digital experiences that we have now today.
Cool. That sounds great. Um, yeah, so you graduate from school. Like what was your first job out of school?
Yeah.
Anything interesting?
So interestingly enough, out of school, um, of course, if you had to guess, my degree is in computer information science. Duh, right? Go figure. Um, and so out of school, I actually did something that kind of started out kicking off this entrepreneurial bent. I was working for Sears and Roebuck and Company.
Wow.
And again, I'm dating myself. But one of the things that they were having me do, and this kind of started my jump into AI, and I'm going to take you there on this little journey because in school I studied AI. So AI is not new. Okay. So we've got to go there. AI is not new. And so I'm doing this stupid, dumb job um, at Sears, and basically, what they had me doing was they would get information from their registers, and they needed somebody to copy it and then put it into a computer. And I'm like sitting there mindlessly, like, well, I'm like, you know what? This is stupid. I'm going to write this little program that will automatically pull this information from the register, so I don't have to do it because I'm lazy. Right. And so I'm like, oh, I was able to actually start pulling in this information, get it into the computers. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I can now go through and start collating information about customers that they didn't know. So I said, look, here's what I did. They're like, that's amazing. It's not what we hired you to do. So if you quit and then you come back to us, you can pitch us this idea, but you can't do it as an employee. So I quit that day. came back and pitched them this idea of how they could capture information, collect it, and then correlate who are their best customers. And so I sold that to, um, Sears. Uh, that was a long time ago before the technology that we have today, but it did incorporate some of the AI technology. But then after that, I went on to get a quote unquote real job in corporate America. I worked for two different Fortune 500 companies, worked for Eaton Corporation as head of digital transformation for them, as well as Stanley Works, heading up digital transformation there too.
Cool. Very cool. And have you done any public speaking as part of any of your roles or?
Yeah, I speak a lot. It's just I love helping people and educating people. Um, so speaking is a passion of mine. Um, you know, so I speak all the time.
Oh, that's cool. And do you think public speaking has enhanced your leadership skills, or what do you recommend to the audience?
Ooh, yeah. Public speaking definitely enhances your leadership skills because it helps you to communicate better. Um, it helps you to judge people's body language, right? What they are into, what they're not into, and how to pivot your conversations to keep them engaged, right? And so you learn a lot of social cues from being a public speaker. So public speaking is a underrated skill that I think more people need to spend time learning and doing.
I can tell you why it's an underrated skill because when you ask people in the U.S. their top five fears, it's like death, snakes, public speaking, not in that order.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
and
Yeah,
I
exactly.
don't know what the other two things are. Um, so we were talking earlier, and you mentioned a book that made a big impact on you called Groundswell by Charlene Lee. Can you pitch the audience on that book for me?
Yeah. So if you don't know who Charlene Lee is, she is absolutely amazing. Amazing. So I started ManoByte in 2007. I was working at Stanley Works. I was on vacation in Hawaii where my mother lived. I was doing some scuba diving and I was just burnt out. And so I'm like, I'm done. I'm going to go and start ManoByte. And at the time, in that time, it was all about social media, right? Social media was just becoming huge. And I was interested in it from the standpoint of natural language processing, which is another term that we're hearing a lot of coming back today about, okay, well, how does natural language processing work with Gen AI? Well, back then, I was wanting to dive into natural language processing to understand sentiment with social media. So I was using it to understand, well, if someone says this or they say that, what's their sentiment and how can we use that to understand and how to use that from a social media marketing perspective. And Charlene Lee, she is the co-author of Groundswell. She was a Forrester analyst. And this
Mm,
book was so amazing because one of the things that just like jumped out at me at the time and really resonated was what they called, the technograph, right? So you've got, yeah, demographic, psychographic, and this was the technographics, right? And so this is how do people work and engage online, right? And so it talks about the different
cool.
level of the way that people from a psychology perspective interact and how that impacts what they do online. Great concept. And I would just fell in love with that concept. And that led me down the journey of where ManoByte would start to grow to leverage technology to understand people's technographics to help businesses make better decisions. Great book for 2008. That's when this book came out. And I keep it by me because this was kind of like my handbook when I first started ManoByte and we started helping customers understand technology and how to leverage it from a business standpoint. So, Charlene Lee, thank you for everything.
Yeah. So obviously, look, 2008 to 2025, like, woo, a lot of changes in digital marketing. Like, what's going on right now?
I wouldn't say a lot of changes in digital marketing. I would say just there's a lot of changes in business, right? So
Right.
since 2008 till now, ManoByte evolved, and we honestly don't even do marketing at all, but we use technology and AI and the basic principles to help businesses grow and scale and to understand how you operationalize everything that you're doing. And things have changed so much. And they're changing at the most the fastest rate that we have ever seen in history, right? And what's going on right now with Gen AI, which we have to be specific and say Gen AI, because Gen AI is just a small subset of AI as a whole. But what's happening with Gen AI and how that's having this impact on people is so significant that every aspect of business has to change. And leaders need to understand how to leverage AI in its fullest capabilities in order to continue to one, stay in business, number two, scale with what's important, and number three, continue to add value, right? So there are so many things that are changing. So let me tell you, you did mention digital marketing, so I want to touch on that. Um, the research and the studies are saying that marketing is dying, right? So I don't need to hire a writer. I don't need to hire a videographer. I don't need to hire a graphic designer because I can get AI to do all three of those things for me. And sure, maybe it's not at the level today that my graphic designer, my writer, a videographer would was doing before, but it's cheaper and it's just still it's close. It's close enough. It's good enough. People, business owners are saying it's good enough. For decades, marketing's always been the first thing to get cut, but now, and that's happening today. But the worst of AI, and there's a lot of AI critics, the worst that we see today is the worst that it's ever going to be. It's getting better week after week.
Right.
So that's just one area when we talk about marketing. There's aspects in sales, operations, customer service, where it just
Oh,
continues to improve and get better and have a significant impact. I'm talking a lot because I'm excited about this. I want to give you one quick story about in the customer service space how Gen AI is really impacting that place. TripAdvisor, they use Maven AI, which we use that technology. They reduce their inbound customer support tickets by 90%, right? By 90%, right? Using Gen AI. And that amounted to a significant savings, right? If you
oh,
think
good.
about it, like if a company has $200 per ticket and you get thousands of tickets every single day, that cost is astronomical. You drop that by 50%, you're saving a boatload of money. But 90%, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, and we're going to see more of that for sure. And then, voice AI and all kinds of things like that. Look, it's super rapid advancement, like you were pointing out. Do you think that's more likely to benefit society, or does it pose significant risks that might outweigh its advantages?
Oh, wow. You went there. I love it. I love it. So here's what I will say. Um, there's always pros and there's always cons, right? So it's nothing new. There's nothing new, right? There's a dark web, right? It's been around for a while, and there's a lot of bad things that are detrimental to society that happen there, right? But do we spend our time talking about the dark web? No, not really. It exists, but we don't spend our time thinking about or fretting about it. Um, so this is the question that people ask. What's it going to do for jobs? I hate this question, right? I hate this question because the truth is, are people going to lose their jobs? Yes. Yes, they're going to lose their jobs. People say, no, we're just going to make them more efficient. And they're only saying that so that people don't go and quit. But like, you think about it, in the early industrial age, right? Let's go back to the early industrial age, even before then, right? How many people still have a job of a blacksmith?
Right.
You don't have a job as a blacksmith anymore. Jobs over time change. What we're seeing right now are jobs over time changing. Are you going to lose the job that you have today? Maybe. Probably. It's likely. Are you still going to have a job? Like, you're not going to be on the street eating homeless. Like, and if you are, that's a different problem. Like, you probably should have been there to begin with. Right. So, I mean, but yes, jobs are going to change. People are going to lose the job that they have today. But just as many of jobs are dying, more jobs are going to be created. A lot more jobs are going to be created than will be lost. And that's always been the case. We've always seen that, and it's going to continue to be true.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, besides that, I mean, some of the things that we worry about are, and they worry more in Europe than here, with GDPR in Europe is data privacy, right? Like, and a couple of
Mhm.
the states have attempted to address that. Colorado, Texas is chasing around people who are not keeping customer information private. Great quick story there. So in Texas, there were companies that had software on people's phones and they were then reselling the information to effectively to car insurers. And the car insurers like, yeah, your rates are going up. And people were like, well, why? They go, oh, well, you're speeding. And you're like, well, maybe I was in the back of an Uber, right? Like, you know, so Texas fined a bunch of companies for doing that. So I think that's going to go away, quickly there. But still, like, massive invasion of privacy there. I never gave consent for anyone to track me when I'm, driving my car.
Yeah, I think I want to take a contrarian view to that, right? And I'll take the view this way, right? I think there's a lot of things that people haven't known that now are becoming known, right? And so I'm going to give you an example of a job that I did many years ago. Again, this was a long time ago in the data and AI space, not like it is today. Um, I went to work for this company. Company will remain unknown. I won't say the name of the company. They're a large grocer. So they brought me in to help out. Day one, they bring me in and say, "Okay, thanks. Here's what we're going to do. Here's what we're going to need you to do. Let us show you your data sources." So we're going to show you the data sources that we want you to be looking at. I'm at a grocery store, and they show me so much information about what they were collecting on individuals. Like, I went home that day and told my wife, I think I want to throw up. I think I want to throw up because basically, like, someone just pulled the curtain back and showed me what every company in the world is collecting. So now they're just talking about it in the news. They've been collecting this information and data all the time, right? You got a
Yeah.
camera on your TV, you got a camera on Alexa, put the little cover over it, try to turn it off. The data is being collected, right?
Yeah.
It's there, right? And so I think, like, we just need to realize that, yes, there needs to be regulations. 100%. We need regulations. We need controls. We need, things to make sure that people are safe. But the data has been collected for a long time. This isn't new, right? But yes, we need more regulations. And I think what we need regulations on are now making sure that people who more people now will be able to have access to do things that they couldn't before, right? And we just need to put in safeguards for that. And there are a lot of tools that people aren't aware about that are out there today in this space, to help put those guardrails in. Like, we're now seeing all these different, security tools, right, to protect our identities, right? Because now, like, are you sure that you're talking to Kevin, right? I do have a digital twin, all right? I do have a digital twin that looks like me, that sounds like me. I showed my kids, my wife one day, and they freaked out. They're like, whoa, how do we know, like, if this is really you? Someone gets a call. These are real things that we have to worry
Yeah.
about. But there are tools that you can put in place to secure and protect yourself that people just need to be aware of. And we do need regulations to keep the people who are going to intentionally do bad things to harm, that keeps us safeguarded. But those things will come. And then one last thing, which is pretty cool. I've been researching this today. So because there are going to be so many agents out there in the world, right? From an AI perspective, there's now this technology where you have agents, they call them guardian agents, agents that are monitoring what agents are doing, because there's going to be so many agents out there that a human absolutely can't do it on their own. So this is a little, dysphoria that we're going to have a world where you've got agents, monitoring and policing and watching agents. I know you and I both like movies. One of the interesting movies was Minority Report, right?
Yeah, great movie. Great movie.
Minority Report. Like literally, you think about the back end behind that. There is going to be, and there's not going to. This isn't a futuristic thing. These things exist today, where agents are literally monitoring, watching, and policing other agents to ensure that they aren't off doing bad things.
Yeah.
Crazy world that we live in today.
Yeah, no, that's definitely already happening. So, you told us a little bit about the start of ManoByte, but a little bit more about the origin story and what you're doing today. And we can all see the shark on video in the back. So, the bite thing. Yeah, absolutely. We want to know.
Yeah. So, ManoByte. I love the water, a big diver. Uh, love Hawaii. Mano is the Hawaiian word for shark.
Oh, got it.
So
Okay, of
shark bite. And bite is with a Y, so it's the
course.
technology piece, right? And
Yeah,
so, that's a nice play on words, right? So leveraging technology from a business standpoint.
right. That's pretty cool. So, and what are you focused on? Obviously,
Yeah.
technology's changed a lot in 18 years. What are you mostly focused on today?
Yeah. So right now, what we're doing, and we've been doing this actually we've been heavily into this for the past 3.5 years, but we're helping companies leverage AI to automate, scale, and improve their business processes, be that sales, operations, customer service. We're helping companies learn how to put together a strategic plan to address the use cases that they have and then figure out how to execute.
Cool. Well, that sounds great. Well,
Yeah,
I'm sure there are a lot of companies out there that need to do that and probably need an AI policy too, for that matter.
100%. AI governance is so huge.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So speaking of that, look, there's a lot of kind of ethical questions around AI too. I mean, I really like Reed Blackman's book called Ethical AI, for example, and I sit on the executive board of the Global AI Ethics Institute, and we think about it kind of like from a very broad perspective, including AI inequality across the world and things like
Mhm.
that. But
Yeah.
focusing more on the U.S., the ethical implications of AI decision making and sensitive areas like healthcare. How should companies ensure accountability and AI driven decisions? I mean, these sounds like tough problems. Have you thought about that or?
Yeah, they are tough problems. They're really, really hard problems. And um and I don't know, and here's what I think. Um First, I used to work. I do have a little bit of a background in the healthcare space and worked in that space for a little bit. And I worked for just a short time. I didn't see it all the way through this project called Prometheus, which led to part of it was when Obamacare came out. This was a project to ensure that healthcare and insurance were equitable, and
Mhm.
that there were fair rates being charged because insurers were all over the place. So the problem is not new, but the problem with Gen AI is that the data is not fair, right? And that's where the
Exactly.
problem begins. It's with the data.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, and I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about how do you solve that when the data is not fair,
Yeah.
right? And so the only way that you can solve that is you have to put in better data, new data to fill the gaps. But there's so many gaps in data that you know that it makes it challenging. I mean, you know, and I'm going to use this very simple that has nothing to do with insurance or healthcare, but I think it's simple enough for people to understand where the problem lies, right? So let's just say that I want to type into an AI um, prompt, right, to have it create me a picture, right? So if I say, hey, create me a picture of a happy man, in a restaurant, that the picture of that happy man is going to be a white man. That's just the way that it is, right? Like, try it. That's what you're going to get. You're never going to get a picture of a happy black man just by putting in that prompt. You'll always have to say, give me a picture of a happy black man, right? And then when you say that, you're never going to get a picture of a black man that looks like me, right? With, I'm not super dark skin, right? I'm kind of, right, caramel, right? Right? So that's kind of, it's a data problem. It's a data problem. And so we have a lot of data problems that lead to the inequality, the fairness of AI. It's not that the technology is wrong. The technology is not doing anything wrong. So it's not an AI problem, it's a data problem. And so
Yeah.
we've got to figure out how to get the data right in order to get to fairness and equality. At least that's
Yeah.
what I think. But you've probably spent a
Yeah.
lot more time thinking about this than I do.
Yeah. I mean, there are definitely ways to correct it, but sometimes it's super hard. Like there's the case of one of the Mag 7 companies. It was like, you know what? We get too many resumes, so we're going to create something to sort through our resumes. Let's take all the resumes of people who work here who are successful, and we'll train an AI on that, and then we'll use that to screen resumes coming in. And it basically, the long story short, it like wouldn't pick any women, right? It only picked guys.
Yeah.
And they're like, something's wrong here. So they go in and they fix stuff, and they basically take all the gender references out of the resumes. Okay. Still doing it. They're like, they're trying to figure out how's this even possible? It's picking up on things like women's softball team or, whatever. Like it was incredible. And eventually they just turned it off because they couldn't make it fair. They just couldn't get it to work. Right. And it was because, like you were saying, the historical data was so biased towards, this case, male engineers that they just couldn't fix it. Right. So,
Yeah. But to my but I think that it is a problem that needs to be addressed. It is a problem that needs to be fixed. But again, it's like, don't throw out the technology, right? Don't throw out the process. Don't just turn it all off just because it wasn't fair yesterday. AI isn't going to fix the problem tomorrow. It's going to take time. It
yeah.
just takes time, right?
Yeah.
And these are hard problems, and we see these problems everywhere. We can probably come up with 100 more examples, but I don't think the solution is to do nothing. I think that that's the wrong solution. I
Yeah.
think we need to dig into, uh, you know, and I love people like you who are spending more time digging into figuring out how to make it better, how to improve it. But you can't turn it off. I don't think you
Yeah.
can turn it off. That's
No,
not the
I totally agree. Like you got to make it better. And for now, honestly, you need human in the loop in many cases.
oh
If
yeah,
it's
I agree.
healthcare or a lending decision, and I think that right now, in many cases, that's not happening in job decisions, and I think that that's going to create some problems, right? But we'll that's a topic for another show.
Yeah, it is a topic for another show.
But turning to our next section of the show, the advice section. I love asking, like, what's a great piece of advice that you've received that you want to share with the audience?
A great piece of advice that I've received
It
that
could be early in your career, it could be when you started your company.
yeah, so I think there's two things that that's good advice, things that I live by. Um, So, and if you've heard me talk, I've said this before. If you've heard me before, I live by the Guns N' Roses rule. Right? They have this. They have this song where one of the lyrics is, "I don't worry about nothing because worry is a waste of my time." Right? And I love that because what that means to me and how I use this every single day is you can't spend time worrying about things that you can't solve, right? Because that leads to paralysis by analysis. Focus on the things that you can fix and continue to do good and to do better and to focus on those things, right? So pick what you can solve and go solve that. And the things that you can't solve, leave that for something else, right? Don't spend
Yeah,
too much time worrying about that.
right.
Yeah.
That totally makes sense. And look, you've founded ManoByte, you've been in a lot of different companies. I don't know, there's probably like 1,000 AI company founders out there right now, right? What advice do you have for them?
Yeah. So my advice is solve for the customer, right?
Right.
So know who the customer is, know your customer is, know the pain points, and solve for your customer.
Yeah, that's great advice. Yeah, I think too often I see, especially very technical founders, wow, I invented something really cool, but it doesn't solve a problem.
Yeah.
And then it never goes anywhere. That is excellent advice. Now, look, there's a lot of big companies out there, and obviously some have gone really far adopting AI, or have been doing AI for, in some guise, for decades,
Hmm.
and others are just getting started. So, what kind of advice do you have for a CEO of a big company that's kind of just getting started in AI? Where should they even start?
That is an awesome question on where do you start. Um, I think there's a couple of things that they should do. Is one, they have to start using it themselves, right? Um, so I think that's the big um, piece. So I just listened to Benioff from Salesforce. He was at the Global World Summit, and he's told this story about how um, he was saying how that he had brought in a new executive onto his to do their strategic planning, and he was using AI to help them solve and answer questions. And this new executive was like blown away, shocked, right? So two things that I learned from that. One, you have to train your executive leaders to use it and know how to use it themselves. I think that's where you have to start using it yourself and to see what you can do with it. Because if you have companies like Salesforce who are leading the charge at pushing AI to the world, right? That's their mission, right? If they're struggling to learn, every company in the whole universe is struggling to learn. So don't feel overwhelmed. Start using it yourself and then get the rest of your executive team to start using it in small ways. Don't overthink it.
Yeah, start pick the low hanging fruit first for sure.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to shift into the last part of the show, which is a lightning round where I mention things and ask if you think that they're underrated or overrated or occasionally fairly rated. And I'm going to kick it off with Tampa Bay beaches, underrated or overrated for the rest of Florida.
Oh, I would say underrated.
Yeah. Okay. Well, get ready for the spring breakers. All right. The Salesforce CRM, underrated or overrated? Speaking of Mark Benioff.
Oh, good question. I think this is one of those that's maybe in. So you specifically said the CRM. So the
Yes.
CRM. So the CRM is highly overrated.
Yes. Very complex. Yeah. Maybe a little too complex.
Yep.
Cuban sandwiches, Cubanos, underrated or overrated?
Oh my goodness. Oh, not fair. Oh, totally underrated.
Absolutely. Actually, my cousin used to own a Cuban sandwich shop on the east coast of Florida. Speaking at business conferences, underrated or overrated?
Underrated.
Totally agree. How about deep sea fishing, underrated or overrated? You're
Ooh.
a diver, but I don't know about the fisherman thing.
Oh. 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 I would say underrated.
All
Underrated.
right. Okay. Well, there's lots of big fish in the Gulf.
Yeah.
Yeah, tarpon fishing's fun, although you can't really eat them.
Yeah.
Uh, how about business strategy books for learning? Underrated or overrated?
You're not gonna like this answer. Overrated.
Oh, wow.
Overrated.
It,
Overrated.
it may depend on
Overrated.
the book too.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of books. Like
That's why I'm overrating it. That's
every CEO is like, I got to write a book, right?
yeah.
So I did read. I can do a little segue, a little breakout here. I read Jack Welch's book Straight from the Gut, which I thought was a solid book.
Yeah.
And I learned a few things from there in terms of like even Jack Welch at his prime, only got hiring rate 80% of the time, but you got to really work hard at that. But I have a personal rule, which is when the iconic CEO of a company retires, I sell the stock. And thank God I sold GE stock when Jack Welch retired.
That's a good rule. That is a good rule.
Anyway, so having a lake house in Michigan, underrated or overrated?
Overrated.
all your friends there are gonna be like, yeah, never invited Kevin back. AI for writing emails to customers, underrated or overrated?
Ooh. I'm gonna say on that one, it's fairly in the middle. It
Yeah.
depends on how you train it to write the emails.
Yeah.
I think it's a little middle.
Uh, sushi in Florida, underrated or overrated?
Overrated.
And last but not least, the movie Inception, underrated or overrated?
Oh my goodness. Way underrated. Way underrated.
Yeah,
That's my
super,
movie.
super
That's
cool
my movie.
movie. Yeah, this entire script was written by AI. So if you think that AI is not doing a good job, you're wrong. Out there in the audience. Anyway, this has been an interview with Kevin Dean, CEO of ManoByte. Kevin, awesome to have you on the show. Did you have fun today?
Oh man, this was a blast. Great,
Awesome.
great chat,
Awesome.
Alex. We had a nice time.
Great to have you.